live stream meetups and stuff, which you should totally start giving us more money. So, next thing we need to do is actually make something useful to where people can actually know whether or not they need to renew their membership. I mean, we've got people subscribed from 2014 that still haven't renewed their membership. So,
yeah, screw it. That's what you get.
That's what we get. Okay, skip. I don't care. So, the first thing.
Make the text a little bit bigger.
I know. Give me a minute. So the first thing I'm going to do is set up this guy. So this guy is Visual Studio for Mac. Woohoo! Formerly Xamarin Studio. And in here I've actually set up a project that you will not be able to see because it is so small on that stuff. So let me open up Visual Studio Code because that's a little bit bigger. Alright. So over on my left-hand side you have the equivalent of a Solution Explorer. And then over here we have directories. So Razor Page application is structured using the Pages directory. So the first thing we are going to want to do is actually just go to the startup CS that we were there before. And let me blow this up for everybody in the back. So the only thing, like I said before, to get started with Razor Pages is you just use MVC. So you go to your service collection, you add MVC, and then you go to your app and you actually use MVC. So that just sets up standard MVC. You can use controllers, the whole 9 yards. So what you'll notice in here is that there's actually a service for talking to Google. So the first thing I did to get started with this project was just look up, is there a Google API for talking to Sheets? Because the goal of this API is to pull, my database is just going to be a web page that the designer can use in order to make sure and update everybody's membership dues as they pay through PayPal. So Google actually has an API, which with a C# client, thank you Mr. Skeet, that you can actually use to go through and query this stuff. So the first thing I did was I just added some configuration for it, and I initialized the sheet service and added that. But that's not interesting. What's interesting is the pages. So over here, you'll notice that there are 4 files. There's the index CSHTML, that's going to be our view to display for the page. Then there's the CSHTML.cs, and that's going to be act as our like code behind if you're familiar with the olden days of web forms. I liken Razor Pages to be like web forms on steroids, since you don't have to wrap everything in a single form and have like post back and all that fun stuff. So what this stuff does is it actually lets you just start writing Razor code right in here. To define a Razor page, up at the top you just start with the page attribute. So that's just going to mark this as a page. And then from there, by convention, you just drop it in the Pages directory. At the end of the talk, we'll talk more about like configuring this and whatnot. Next thing we want to do is define our model. Our model is going to be this guy right here, the CSHTML backing page. You don't have to define the model. You can do everything from the Razor page. You're allowed to do that. But I like separation of concerns, nice clean code, stuff like that, so I define the model. The one thing that you're going to want to notice about the model is that this is web.pages.index model. We are not going to be using like an MVC style model here. What? Well, I can do that. That's about it. There.
Also, slow down just slightly.
What do you mean? I have to go fast. It's a lightning talk. Jeez, man, I can't keep up. So the first thing you'll notice is that the model is actually not a traditional MVC model. This is what got me hung up like 2 hours last night trying to debug this stuff. So the model is actually going to be a page model. So over here, you'll see this class. This is actually our backing store for the view or our code behind. And what you do to define that is you just inherit from page model. And then you can just, by convention, just use like index model, check model for whatever page you're on. So you want to do like the page name, then model. And after that, you can start defining methods in here. So you can define methods like onPost, onGet. You can define constructors. You'll notice in here there's a bind property. So what this does is when you post to this guy, it's going to look for this in all the form data, and that's going to pull that out for you. So if we go back to the CSHTML, you'll notice we have a form here. So I think giving you guys a bit of perspective about how this works. So if I go back to here, and then gamemembers.azurewebsites.net. Come on, Wi-Fi. So you'll notice this is the finished application that I have deployed on Azure that you all can go start using today. So what this does is that I have 2 components to this. I have the first top half of the page, which is just enter in your email address. And then if I blow this up for everybody, you can enter in your email address, and then you can click the check membership button. What that's going to do is it's going to post back to our model that we just defined. And then after that, it's going to run through, and it's going to direct over to our check page, which is actually going to perform the validation to go to that spreadsheet and say, hey, is this guy in our spreadsheet? The next link is just a standard start a new membership, which everybody should do. All right, so now I have to figure out where my code is at. So the next thing is you'll notice that up at the top we include the standard tag helpers. So all the standard MVC stuff is available in Pages and you can use it. You can inject stuff into your views, you can use the tag helpers, you can define custom stuff. All of it's available. So actually we are using tag helpers on this page, which is like ASP validation 4, and you can do that for ASP4, and all the stuff is available. So the next thing we'll do is we'll go back to the model, and like I said before, it goes to find this property, and then if we actually look at the post, so if we were to type into there and we were to hit the button in order to send the post message, what it will do is it will do the model state validation. So I'm actually have an email address attribute right there, which it does all the validation for, and then if it passes, it's going to go to the check page. So in order to follow a more streamlined flow, we'll look at the code behind first on that. So the check page is a bit more complicated than the index. The index is more of like a landing page. All it does is it just gives you the data and then it just wants you to perform some action. So on the check page is where we actually do the meat and guts of this. And so, as I said before, dependency injection is available. I've configured my Google Sheets repository to go hit that spreadsheet and return all my data. So what we can do is on the onGet, we are sending over through the route values the email address that we got from the index page. So basically, page-to-page communication is what you're going to want to go towards in the Pages model. So it's not like model view controller where you have actions and you want to post to certain actions and all that. You want to have everything self-contained in one siloed page. So after we use the route values to pass over our email address, we just make sure sanity check. And then the next thing we do is we just get all of our members from the repository, standard. And then we just use, from our repository, we just look up the member. If we don't see a member, we just go back to index. And then after that, otherwise, we'll just render the page. And this just uses standard I actions. So the next thing we'll do is we'll just investigate the markup. So if I were to just go over to Google Chrome and enter in my email address, you will see I need to renew my dues. I am doing a bad job of this. So I'll have to give hell money after this. All right. So you'll see that I'm actually in here. This is like not Fox data at all. Just hitting that spreadsheet is checking for my name, and it has a date column on the spreadsheet. So if I were to just go reveal everybody's most important details, we have a due date dues paid, and it has just a nice little thing right there. And then it uses that to check. So we can go into I'm going to switch to community real quick. And on the right hand side, I'm going to go to the models. And then I'm just going to open up the member model. So you'll see that this has the first name, the last name, the date dues paid. I'm using more of a saturated, full-fledged domain. So I'm using like is current, which means we have to make sure we have a due date in there. And then after that, is the due date greater than today? All right, we're good. They're current. Otherwise, nope. And then we'll check against our email. So from that, it goes back to the page, and then it will do just standard MVC stuff. So you can just take there. As I said before, we define our model to just be our code behind, and our model on our code behind is going to have a member. And I just showed you that member class. It has all these nice little things in there. And then we can go back to our code, and we can see our model. And the next thing is that we can use that to determine some important business logic stuff. So if we go back, I know I'm switching around a lot, but it's a lot easier to visualize it like this. So we have an alert up here. We're styling this alert by just looking at whether or not they're current. So if they're not current, we're just going to set to the danger class, which is just bootstrap terminology for we need to make sure that they have the red scare on there. And then the next thing we do is if they're good, we do the success message. So hey, we're all good. You don't need to renew, or you can renew again. I'll probably add logic in there where they don't need to renew again. So, hopping over back to community, we'll just go take a look at now that I've showed you more of a Solution Explorer view, we'll take a look at the features of Visual Studio for Mac. So, this has a much better view. So afterwards, we can either redirect back there. Oh yes, I want to show you the code behind. Afterwards, we have our buttons. So one button, we can use an ASP page. So think of MVC. You have the ASP like action link, and you have the ASP route values and all that stuff. You can still use that, but there's actually specific page functionality that you can use to redirect back and forth between all the pages. So from there, we have role equals alert, and then I'll just show you over here. And then we're just using standard MVC stuff. So we're concatenating the first name, the last name, and making sure if they're current, we're going to just display the text. So one more time from the top, we have a startup CS. The startup CS configures a bunch of stuff. From there, we import our Google repository using the settings, our super secret settings, and then we add singleton. This is just standard ASP.NET Core stuff that's available to all things. And then we add our repository. From there, we go and we render our page, since that's the first page that it does. After we render our page, we post back to the index, which redirects to the check page, renders the check page, and then we're good. So that's my lightning talk. And if you want to learn more, you can just go read this on, you can go read about it over on the Razor Pages Startup. So I will post this over on the meetup page so you guys can take a look at getting started. There's actually a lot more stuff to ASP.NET Pages that we didn't cover today. You can actually have like specific action method type stuff where you can have multiple forms on a page and whatnot, but that's beyond the scope of this lightning talk. Well, all right, any questions? All right, that's all the show.
Cool. So, for starters, I live streamed that whole thing, and there are apparently people watching because people are tweeting it. So have fun.
So did you put it on the meetup page? People were.
No, I haven't done that yet. Also, I'm not going to bother with the lav mic just because it's such a finicky piece of crap. And this mic is actually okay. It's not great, but it's okay. So I'm going to move that forward so it's more obvious, and like it'll just get the speaker. Caleb, how much do you move?
I'm all over the place, but I can.
Can I chain you to the floor tonight?
I can stand in one spot if you need me to.
Cool. So for like the 3 people that are probably watching the live stream and they cut in and out a little bit, sorry in advance.
Post the link on the meetup page.
I will the second we're actually live with the real speaker.
All right. Back to you, Gillard.
Thanks, Dustin.
Kill me. What am I doing?
So tonight, we're going to go to our feature presentation, and our speaker for tonight is an international speaker, an author, a 6-time MVP award, Microsoft MVP awardee, and he's a long-time community leader and also a former Microsoft developer evangelist. So he's working for Quicken Loans currently.
Take that.
And tonight he's going to be talking about dependency injection for modern applications. So let's welcome Caleb.
Cool.
All right, is there a specific microphone we're going to use?
Nope. You're good. Just talk.
Stand here, and it'll. Sorry.
There's your fidget spinner. Your fidget spinner for the live stream.
So I'm up in town this week at a conference, and they're giving out just for an internal Quicken Loans conference. But we're giving away, like, there's all kinds of things they're giving away, and I realized that I had way too many fidget spinners from tables. So these aren't Quicken Loans, these are from some other vendor. But I was like, so if you want one, ask good questions, and I'll throw like a ninja star, or maybe just toss it to you. I haven't quite finished sharpening them yet. That's, if you sharpen them enough, then you can, then it becomes a ninja star.
Put it on the back of it.
Yeah, I'll have that somewhere. All right. How much time do we have? How late do we go till?
90 minutes.
9, 10 o'clock?
Yep. Just go till like 9. I'm like not even kidding. You got time because we only had one lightning talk, so you can run until you.
All right. I also brought some squeezy stress balls from a company I used to work at, but they're fun, so I can throw those at people. Oh, are both screens on now? Okay. Otherwise, I was gonna have everybody just slide over here because I felt bad for everyone's neck. Painful. I always like to get a feel for the room. How many of you guys are already using dependency injection every day in your day-to-day life? Should be everybody, just about. Okay, I get it. If you're not, don't feel bad. I mean, you should, but
Who wishes they were using dependency?
yeah, don't feel bad. Here's why I say that. Right, I had a really long career. I have had. All right, worked for Microsoft. Was a major architect of some major companies on big rewrites. Left Microsoft. Then a friend of mine who wrote Spring in Action, which is a Java book, taught me dependency injection. And it was like, my world changed, okay? It was just literally a world-changing shift. And so that's really what I'm going to talk about is the story of dependency injection. I find that some things make sense only by looking at the code. Like if you ever used a model view presenter pattern, right? That particular pattern, back in the day, that was the right way to do WinForms and also ASP.NET forms. And I just didn't register until I actually did the code. Dependency injection is a little bit different. It never made sense to me why it was worth it until we kind of walked through a little bit of that. So that's what we're going to spend a little bit of time tonight on, I hope. And I hope you enjoy it and we have a good time. What is anybody specifically running into or hoping to get out of tonight?
I'd like the stream to work.
Like the stream to work. I will contribute to that as best as I can.
All I can
So,
ask.
stream, start working. Let me know if that did it for you.
I think you're good. It
All
was
right.
magic.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Dependency injection beyond very specific cases.
Okay. So give me like.
Use it all the time for like an authentication provider.
Okay.
Nothing else.
Oh,
It
thank
really
you.
breaks the fluidity of development for me. It seems like more things get moved into runtime and compile time, and that kind of bugs me a little bit.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. We'll maybe hit on that definitely.
Unit testing against dependency injection.
Unit test. That's good. So you guys are just priming everything here. This is awesome. All right. Unit testing. Other use cases in the flow of a developer, kind of thing. What else? Yeah.
So we configure injection in which part of application?
Sure. We'll talk about that. Yeah. I like to have all my DI configured in one spot. You don't have to. You can, depending on the container that you're using, you can have different profiles. I like to have one place that's my Rosetta Stone for my app. Right? It's got all my mappings, interface so we can talk about that. Anything else? Anything else? All right. You guys feeling good? That food was good. Anyone else have like fire breath? You feel like you have fire breath?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad there's some distance here, or I would like suck a mint right now, because if you guys are getting hit, let me know, because I feel bad about that. All right, this is weird. Am I really, you need me here? If I come over here, does that screw everybody up?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all right. All right.
You're literally good to like move, stop.
Yeah.
You move a little bit more.
Yeah, oh wow, really?
Yeah.
Man, this is crazy freedom now. Okay, that's awesome. How's the audio? Can you guys still hear me okay? Yeah, down that way? All right, good. Appreciate that. This is a good interaction. This is like feedback. You know, it's a yes or no question like this. I get it. I'm with you. My name is Caleb. It's nice to meet you guys. Thanks for having me here. So scoot back. Okay, because I was too in the stream. All right, thank you. Good feedback. So I do have a family. They're kind of amazing. I just like to include them because clearly the women in my family know how to jump, and the guys not so much. Also, my 10-year-old, she's like, whatever, I'm gonna kung fu this. She's just like, I don't jump. What? I'm not doing that. So that's just kind of. I live in Texas, but I work in Detroit. So every day I walk to my living room, and that's my 1 hour my commute to Detroit. And sometimes, I'll be honest, sometimes like, there's a backup. Like a dog will run right in front of me. Oh, come on. It doesn't suck walking to my living room as my commute, okay? About once a month I'm actually here in Detroit. But I'm enjoying Detroit quite a bit. My blog, Developing UX, if you want to stalk me on Twitter, it's @CalebJenkins. And the hashtag for my gang is #MyGang. Does my gang actually have a Twitter account? I couldn't find one.
Gang announce.
Gang announce?
Mhm.
Thank you. I would have included that. A little bit of my background, just to kind of let you give a little bit insight into who I am. My degree is actually originally in design. I became a developer as like a just total complete fluke, which is why I have some content out on Adobe TV. I was a 6-time MVP. I've worked on some books. I got to speak at a lot of places, but right now I work at Quicken Loans, and I've worked with a lot of other companies. So one of the funnest was honestly when I was at Six Flags as their senior architect, because when you left the corporate office and walked across the street to the park, you were required, part of the corporate, you had to put on the gold name badge, so they knew you were from corporate. And mine didn't say software architect, it just said architect. That's awesome. I'm just gonna tell you right now. You feel like you want to make statements. That's not a load-bearing beam. You want to sound like you know what you're talking about. You have no idea. It's great. This is I'm gonna schlow for Quicken Loans just one slide, okay? Just because they did fly me up here and let me stay in a hotel and it really supported every time I try to go speak somewhere. They're like, yes, go do that. So there's only really two things about Quicken Loans I like to tell people. 95% and save $500, right? So 95% of people that use Quicken Loans are happy with them. I don't know what's up with those other 5%, but every month when my wife pays our mortgage, because we refinance through Quicken Loans, she's always like, this is the best thing ever, and she really loves the feedback and the mechanism, and anyways, I won't go into all that. And if you know someone that works at Quicken Loans and you get referred, you work with an internal team and you end up saving about $500 in fees by being referred internally if you refinance or get it. So just throw that out there. You know someone, okay? So if you're looking to, by all means, I'd love to connect you there. And we're also on GitHub, github.com, Quicken Loans, and rockframework.github.io. Because frankly, a lot of the stuff we use internally that we find has been beneficial, we're trying to get better at pushing that outside of the company. Okay, so that those things are more community support and adoption of those things, or a way for us to support what's happening outside of Quicken Loans. So that's it. Sound good? That was easy, right? Feel like you got your money's worth?
That was easy.
These are some of the talks that I tend to give. I was asked one time if someone was like, "Am I going to feel awkward coming to your coding naked talk?" I'd be like, "No, it's not that kind of talk." If you guys were at Detroit Code, I think was it a month and a half ago, 6 weeks ago, roughly? I don't know. But that was the talk I gave there. It's all about unit testing the edges. The reason I mention that because that is purely a unit testing talk, and it goes really well with dependency injection. So it's a lot of fun. Also, 10 reasons your software sucks. That happens to be my favorite talk I give. Mainly because people are always like, why only 10? Yeah, usually we only have an hour. So anyways, that's just some of the stuff that I like to do. On 3 of my talks, I include this slide. The dependency injection will turn you into a complete coding ninja. The full scope of DI is not in this talk, right? So if you go to that, but you are in the dependency injection talk. So you get the full deal today, right? So that's exciting. So be excited to be here in this moment right now in this time. All right? Do you guys know this? The single greatest thing that you can do to make your code more testable and healthy is to start taking dependency injection approach to running software. Anybody know who said that? It was in a book. It was in a book, so it must be true. So just saying. I learned if you write a book or even a chapter in a book, it's a good idea to put in it quotes that you later want to refer to. So because then it's smart, right? Because it's in a book. There you go. It's true though. How are we at? Let me see what happens here. Why is this not doing the thing? There's usually audio right about now.
I may have used up all of the technologic goodwill tonight making this thing work.
That could be. Imagine you're hearing the theme to James Bond right now. Like a really good theme to James Bond.
I know why it's not working.
You do? You broke it? Yeah?
It's because we're capturing your audio and we're not passing it
So
back.
are the people streaming hearing it?
Yes.
That's
They
great.
are probably...
It's a better experience for the people
They might
online.
be hearing it.
Right now
I
than
can't
for the people in the
guarantee
room. I don't know. So James Bond, right? Welcome to the espionage world of dependency injection, inversion of control, and the strategy pattern, right? Again, James Bond theme music. You're hearing it right now. So this is what I want to throw out. Your mission, only if you choose to accept it, okay? But you need to stop Dr. Evil and save the world, okay? For those of you that didn't know, this is going to be your super spy, right? He's going to save the world. That's your code. And this would be Dr. Evil, okay? Just context. What I want you to think about, just off the top of your head, what is that code going to look like if you were going to write that code? I'm going to have a class called like my 00 super spy, something like that, and maybe a method called like stop Dr. Evil with a spy watch. If you guys didn't know, James Bond always has these cool watches, okay? It's got like a spy watch. Yes?
Where did those Austin Powers was in that?
Where did the what?
Austin Powers?
Yes, that is correct. Yes, I am merging James Bond with Austin Powers. I feel totally, yeah, why not? Yeah. Yeah, because Dr. Evil, come on. Anyways, yeah, but either way, you want to stop Dr. Evil. But yeah, good call. When I first gave this talk, I actually had not James Bond music, it was Mission Impossible music. Oh my, people really freaked out over that. Like, what are you doing? You're throwing us off. So what happens though if now you stop Dr. Evil, right? Your code was successful, but now they're like, hey, do it again. You want to stop a nuclear attack, rescue the Queen, use your spy car. You know, this is the kind of thing where your first release is successful, and now people are, oh yeah, now it's just a little thing now. We were doing it this way, now we just also want to do this, right? Oh hey, this would be an easy feature to add, right? You guys ever get requests like that? Yeah, the marketing team or the owner or whoever, they come to you and they're like, well, hey, listen, now let's go get this Goldfinger tooth guy, or hey, let's use this jetpack. And I'm like, well, I've written code with jetpacks in it. Yeah, or use the underwater car or the spinny thing, or there's the laser watch. and cutting through the snow with lasers. It's weird. And you guys ever get this request from your clients? They're like, oh, we want an underwater fake crocodile. Yeah, that old thing again, right? What's your code going to start to look like now, is what I'm saying. All of a sudden you've got Stop Dr. Evil with the spy watch, but Stop Dr. Evil with the spy car, or Save the Cream with the secret crocodile, because that makes sense. This is not sustainable. This gets ugly, right? Or was there a better way to approach this overall and essentially divide and conquer, right? So essentially, what if we broke things down into their common interfaces, and we made our code more composable, right? You guys did hear about the guy that wanted to go study music, but he was from a very wealthy family, and his dad was like, listen, you can't go study music and you can't become a rocker. You're going to go and become a lawyer like the rest of the family, or we're cutting you off. He didn't care. He went and studied music. Do you know why? He preferred composition over inheritance. Yeah. So, back to here, we're trying to make our code more composable, right? So now I've got a spy watch and it implements iSpy gadget, or I've got Stop Dr. Evil mission, it implements iSecret mission. I've got my 00 super spy, it implements iSecret agent, right? I could have it called James Bond, right? You get it? I love working with interfaces. Okay. What are some other interfaces that you use in your day-to-day life? Anybody ever use a copy machine? Those things are like evil. I have no idea how they work, but I know how to work them. Does that make sense? I put the paper down, I hit the green button, more paper comes out that looks exactly like the stuff I stuck on top. Easy interface. You with me? What's it doing under the hood? I don't know. I don't care. Right? I change cars. I'm never like when I rent a car, am I go, whoa, is this thing a V6? I'm used to a 4-cylinder. I don't think I can drive this thing because the engine's different. Right? That would be tight coupling if the engine mattered on how you drove it. With me? If I'm pretty much like a steering wheel, vertical pedal on the right, I can make it work. Right? So it just, and literally engines, anybody not know how to change their oil and stuff? We can be real with each other for a minute. It's okay. This is live over stream over us and our closest 5,000 friends that are watching online.
7.
What's that?
7.
7, almost 5,000, right? Just shy of
8. We're up to 8.
Up to 8,000 now. That's amazing. Wow. So I'm just talking about the internals. I know how to use the external, but the internals. I feel like as a man, if my car won't start, I check the hood because I feel like as a man I should. It's like, let's pop the hood, and I look, and I've done nothing, and I lean around, I'm like, try it now, honey. Still won't start. Oh, I've done everything I can. You know, right? We can be honest with each other, right? Okay.
You gotta reach in and wiggle some cables.
I've heard that. Yeah, you're the second person to tell me that part. Okay. Because then if it does start, you're a genius, right? It's like my favorite ever. All right, so we start breaking these things up, and so now we have a spy watch, implements iSpy gadget. I've got a mission I'm pulling in, and then notice here I'm kind of newing these things up. So I'm starting to do what? I'm starting to separate my concerns into the spaces the things that they need to know about. Okay, I'm gonna give you an example. Does this spy gadget laser work? Okay, let's just back up to the first example. Does it shoot a laser? In the first example, what do I need to do in order to test the laser? First, go get Dr. Evil and put myself into a life-threatening situation where I have to use it. Does that make sense? There's no separation there. It's like if I want to test does the spy watch work, I need to be on a mission in the field to test it. Because they're just one big thing. Now, if I start breaking them apart, I can say, does this spy watch work? I don't need a mission. I don't need some evil person I'm trying to stop. I can look at the thing in isolation. Right? So that's good. I'm starting to introduce strategy pattern here, where all strategy pattern is I have multiple implementations of the same interface. And I have the ability to apply the correct implementation that the situation warrants. Right? So polymorphism is literally just multiple things implementing the same interface. So the interface is the same, but the behavior might be different. Okay? All right. Also, it gives me that ability to have new incarnation. What's the word I'm looking for? Thank you. Incarnations of my super spy. Right? Anybody know who the best spy was?
Awesome
Powers.
Thank you. Nailed it right there. Second best. Sean Connery. Thank you, guys. Yeah, not my favorite, actually, but definitely he was the best. Who was the worst?
George Lazenby.
Who was the worst that's on the string? Roger Moore. Yeah, these are like universally accepted things, right? I've never given this talk once and when someone, Pierce Brosnan was horrible. No, right? Roger Moore, clearly. It's, how sad is that? That it's a we just all agree. We're like, oh yeah, it was definitely. All right, let's keep going. One thing you'll notice here, great, I'm introducing interfaces. That's looser coupling. But what is this? Yeah, right in my code, I've got these concrete implementation. I'm newing things up in my code, and I'm tying my code now to this concrete implementation. So it's great I've got these interfaces, and maybe now I've got like one spot I might have to change, but boy, that feels really, this code is really tied now to that implementation. I'm really violating a lot of solid principles, and I'm making my code less mobile. It's really kind of locked in here. So one thing I could do, I can introduce a factory. Right. Now factories are great, especially if maybe as I'm newing up an object, there's a couple of things I need to make sure I'm setting along the way, and I really want to enforce some behavior around the act of newing things up. But in this particular case, so I end up with I've got a factory and it returns a secret agent or a spy or a spy watch. To me, this is kind of like Q, right? Like James Bond, he would always come back and talk to Q and get like supplied by Q, right? But that's not really helpful once you're out in the field. Once you're kind of up and running, once you're in maintenance mode, right? What's the longest part of software? It's not the creation, right? It's the fact you have to read it later and maintain it and maybe make changes and updates. And at that point, now you just kind of swapped one coupling for another, right? Because what's the problem with this? We're not coupled now any longer to the watch or to the specific implementation. What are we coupled to now?
Factory.
Yeah. I've got this factory now that I have to drag around with me everywhere. Right? So it's like, my code still doesn't feel very lightweight at this point. My code isn't really, I can't use it in multiple places unless I bring a whole factory. How would that, could you imagine, like I've got this window frame, and I've got this great window frame, and it's lightweight, and it's double pane, and you can put it anywhere. It's great, I'll take it home. Okay, hold on, I need to get you the window pane factory that comes with it. That kind of loses something there. Let's talk about some scenarios. So there's other ways of getting your implementation into the class that needs it, right? So in this particular case, okay, so factory dependency, I already talked about the downside of that, but I could also use dependency injection, where instead of the class going and getting the things that it needs, it's being handed those things when it needs them. And that's really the difference, right? So let's see, I've got constructor injection here. I could also have property injection, method injection. And really, this is a style of approaching my software, and where I'm handing the thing that needs it what it needs. Okay. There's a lot of values of this, but are there potential trade-offs? What are some of the trade-offs? I think you hinted at one earlier. So talk to me. What are some of the upsides and downsides to this approach?
I mean, if this is very domain-specific code, you're clicking. Visual Studio is a wonderful thing. You want to know where the bug is. You're clicking on the different objects. It falls apart immediately in this pattern. Like you click on an interface, and you're not going to get what that code is.
So with Visual Studio, you can now say Control F12, and that will take you to the implementation, not to the interface. I have no idea how they do that. It's crazy magic, but I love that they do that. That was added, I think, in VS 2015 or maybe before then. But you're right.
Based on an existing dependency injection framework?
I think it actually is looking for implementations.
In all implementations of the interface.
Yeah.
But how do you know which one?
Yeah, which one is?
Yeah.
It's offer you to choose. If there are several, it will offer to choose one.
This very much turns. I mean,
Sure.
The whole spy thing even starts to fall apart now. Where
So this was a lot more code, right? Like before, it was one method.
A gun falls in his hand as he shoots it. I mean, that's even the parallel.
Let's come back around to that. Okay, because I don't want to drop that, but typically you're not going to do every approach, right? So this is like a lot of scenarios. Typically you're you're just going to say, hey, these are the things that I'm using, and so here's my opinion on most code. Code should either do the things or it should organize the things. And that's true for me for methods within a class, and for classes. So in this case, what is the actual spy doing? He's really just coordinating the things, right? He's not doing all the innards of a gun or whatever the weapon is. He doesn't need to know how to use specific things. Think of an example, right? You ever use like a logger that implements a logging interface?
iLogger factory.
iLogger, right? And then you want to completely rip out all your logger implementations because you're going from a 32-bit to a 64-bit implementation? Well, that doesn't make any sense. Or you're going from a version, like, I'm just saying when you're using a logger, you don't want to care at that point how it's logging the stuff. You just want to be able to say, log this for me. And at that point, you're testing the fact that you want to be able to test the fact that you called the logger, not that the logger is working when you're really testing the thing that's using the logger. So in this particular case, you're right, I'm not testing the weapon at this point. I would be testing the spy. Does he know how to go in and take a weapon and use it against a mission, right? I would have other tests, though, where I'm testing the weapon itself in isolation, and I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to say, does this thing work regardless of where I'm using it? And then I'd still have integration tests where I would test it in, kind of more end-to-end, test them in specific scenarios, make sure that things integrate. Okay, so let's drill into, especially when we get to some of the code, the specifics of navigating. So there was another thing over here.
You need to know what is going to set mission thing, what's going to give it a concrete mission class or the gadget class.
Do I?
Inside here.
Why?
According to this, because you have a private, your main constructor is taken in 2 parameters.
Correct.
So you can't new it up without giving an implementation.
So here, I can't new it up, but I wouldn't be. Because I'm saying, I'm letting you know at the front end, I need these 2 things. Right. Whoever's going to end up calling this guy and instantiating him, yes, he will have to say, I want this spy, ooh, I'm going to use this mission and this gadget. Right? But then someone else can say, I'm going to use the same spy with a different mission and a different gadget. Yeah?
And so the point is that if at the point where you are viewing them and passing them in and you don't know what the hell is going on, that's a really big formula already. So
Say what you just said one more time.
So at the point where you are viewing the 00 super spy,
Yep.
and they're passing these things in, and you're still having issues finding where the implementations are by pressing control, was it Enter F12 or Shift F12?
Okay, that's just navigating in Visual Studio.
But I mean, Shift F12 would be in the lower versions because haven't used this plenty of months yet.
Sure.
But yeah, at that point you should know the concrete implementation by that point. So
I agree. So typically at this point, you are generally speaking going to know what the implementation is, right? But the value is, if I in the future need to change out that implementation for a different implementation, I want the flexibility to be able to do that, right? So for example, I could have, as long as I'm basing my code on the interface and not on the concrete type, it does 2 things for me. Yes, I could change out implementations, okay? The benefit of DI is not the flexibility to change implementations. That's a side benefit. It's not, to me, it's not the reason you go a DI route. Okay? I want to write a unit test that says when someone calls run mission, the gadget gets called use mission and that the correct mission is passed to it. If I wasn't doing DI, that becomes really hard to test that my spy is doing what he's supposed to do. But as long as I'm doing dependency injection with interfaces, that becomes super simple to mock with something like MockQ, Rhino mocks, anything like that. Or I could run a fake class that I'm going to pass in. So the real power of DI, there's a benefit of being able to change out implementations, and that's nice. Right? To me, that's future maintenance. But I'm always cared about, what do I care about now? And right now, I care about validating that this is in fact doing what it's supposed to be doing. Okay?
Mostly about code coverage then.
Not just code coverage, code correctness, right? And the reason I say that, because it's really easy to think of code coverage as some kind of silver bullet right? Oh, we were at 100% code coverage or 80% or whatever that number is. And there's value to that. Generally speaking, more code coverage is better, right? That helps me have more regression. And not for your code. I'm just saying for the code other people write and they check in, you want code coverage to make sure they're not breaking your stuff. Okay, obviously you're not breaking your stuff. I break my stuff all the time, but you know, that's just me. Go ahead.
And another thing is actually you can increase code coverage without actually testing your code. All you have to do is just make sure your test runs through all the code. Then just say assert true and
right. Yes. So again, code correctness is really what we're wanting to validate. Yes.
So elaborate on that correctness.
That it's doing the thing it's supposed to be doing.
Isn't that just an echo though at that point?
How do you mean?
Isn't that run mission does call use get?
I gotcha. So
and
in the case like this is a fairly simplified example, and you're probably right, right? In the case where, let's say, I'm calling a static method and it's doing crypto for me and it's buried inside of a poly loop that's doing a retry and it's making sure that and at that point I want to say, look, if I call this method and it throws an exception because it ends up calling some web service and there's a timeout and you're having issues with that, I'm not saying that's something that I've been dealing with this last week. But I'm just saying, okay? Just saying. And then you want to wrap that in a poly statement. Have you looked at poly? It's a great library. But oh my goodness, if you're not used to it, you're not just going to look at it and go, oh yeah, perfect. I know it's going to call this thing 3 times. But again, when you have an interface that you can mock and say, look, when you call this, throw this exception, that's a scenario that you're testing the poly, and then you can say this method should have been called 4 times. Because if you had a 3 retry, right? So the first time and then 3 retries. That's dirt simple to test with DI and mocks. It's a pain to test in other scenarios.
That still implies that the break-even point for switching to this has some high level of code complexity. Mostly what I do is line of business applications.
Sure.
And it's domain-driven business rules and
so here's where I'll go with that, okay? Because I'm with you at some level. If the purer your code is, and by pure I mean functionally pure, right? So pure implies this: I have inputs, I have 1 output. There are no side benefits. I mean side effects from calling this method. So everything this method does is captured in the output. And so it's not updating some database somewhere, it's not, and always whenever I give it the same inputs, I'm always going to get the same outputs. Okay? Like a string reverse, as an example, is a really good functionally pure method, right? It does this one thing, I can stack it up, it's not doing DI under the hood, and the more functionally pure my code is, right? Typically the easier it is to unit test. I don't typically in that scenario, I'm giving an input, I'm getting an output. That's like the easiest thing to unit test ever, right? Then it's done. But as soon as there's any type of point where I'm newing things up in my code, that immediately makes it harder to test and less obvious at the surface level to understand what this class or this method is doing under the hood. And all I would say about that, good code coverage and unit tests is your first line of defense against for automated regression tests to help the business move faster, okay, and to reduce technical debt. So at that point, I would just say, does unit testing and code coverage matter? I guess it depends on how much the business matters, right? Because it could be a line of business application. If it's not a critically important business application, then it might not matter. I have a talk on Coding Naked where I talk about the edges. The edges are hard to test, okay? And one example of that is system.dateTime is a static method that you're calling. That's a pain to test. If you've got a business rule that says this certain thing should only happen on Tuesday, this is how it should behave, but on Wednesdays it should behave like this. Well, it's really easy to write an iDate provider interface, inject that, and the only thing it's doing is doing system.date now, just returning the system. So it's just doing something, but it allows you to override that behavior in your unit test. Do I really need to do that for system.datetime.now? Like, really? I would say, well, if you're doing something you're just adding a log statement, no, you're just going to do system.datetime. Done. If it's something that's code critical, and if this doesn't work properly, my business is going to suffer, then probably. And you want to be armed with the tools that will allow you to do that.
See, that actually is a really good example.
There you go. So, all right, so dependency injection does not require you to use a DI framework. Yeah,
Can you go back to the
I can.
So your default constructor has a private access modifier. How is this different from not having the default constructor?
Yeah, so in general, and I know that .NET, I want to say with 1.0, if you, is the air not on in here? I can't tell, I sweat all the time, but I saw some people doing this. All right, I'm okay. I never know, I'm from Texas, and Texas is generally warmer than Michigan, but significantly less humidity. Oh my goodness. I get here, I'm like, oh good, it's overcast, and then I walk outside, and are you kidding me? I believe .NET, it used to, and I want to say it was in the .NET 1, and I haven't looked at the docs like with 4.5. If you didn't provide a default constructor, it would provide one for you. And so the only way in that case, good catch by the way, I didn't even point that out, if you want to force people to use a specific constructor, in order to force them to use, in this case, the greedy constructor, you would have to create a private constructor that was private and inaccessible then.
I think that has changed. Once you specify
a constructor, it doesn't give you a default constructor. And I kind of thought that was the case now, but to be honest, I've been giving this talk for about 12 years. Yeah, it's just changed a little bit. So it used to be dragons and knights holding swords. So I don't know. What's that?
Why you switch to James Bond?
Oh, because, why not? He's James Bond. And Dr. Evil, so that's fun. All right, so I could, now in this case, I'm probably not going to use a factory, right? I would probably actually new things up. But what am I doing here? My application is composing. There's a compositional root to my application where it's saying, as an application, I need this thing and this thing and this thing. Cool, go do the thing that I want to do, right? So I don't need a DI framework. What are the things that using a DI framework will help with? How many of you are writing applications with only 3 classes? Yeah. So a DI framework is going to help reduce the maintenance of this kind of compositional root code, right? Let you keep that in a single place so it's more maintainable. The other thing that a DI framework will give you are really good lifecycle patterns. You guys that learn patterns, what's the first pattern that you learned? Singleton. What's the first pattern you should stop using right now? Yeah, don't use that thing. Okay? You will shoot yourself in the butt using singleton pattern. One, you're probably going to code it wrong. Just saying. 2, you don't want to code it. You don't want to hard code singleton. You want to let your DI framework, if it should be singleton, that's fine. But just when you're doing it up, when you're declaring it and configuring it in your DI framework, say, oh, by the way, this thing should be singleton. It's one line, it's easy, and then you can move on. Right? I'll give you an example. I worked on a project once where we were building a HTTP listener, which obviously should be singleton, right? Because one port, one listener, one port, that's it. And so we built this whole thing, didn't think twice about it. We got pretty far down the route when we realized we could double our capacity if we listened on 2 ports. Think about that. Small thing, would have been simple, but in our entire system, it was hard-coded as a singleton. And that became a nuisance. So don't hard-code singletons. All right, here's the goal, right? We're trying to build these applications, not these applications. It's the same parts. You with me? UI, auth, validation, UI, auth, validation, cache, rules. I want my code to look, when I'm on here, how do I change my cache?
Go to the cache now.
I pull it out, I have something else with the same interface, and I put it in there. So I want to go from a Redis cache to an Azure cache, or I want to, actually Azure cache is Redis cache now, I think. But I want to go from something that's called not Redis, and I want to go to Redis as an example, right? And I just, done, right? How am I going to swap out my cache here? Step 1, you guys ever do this? Lego people, get out your Dremel tool, right? I'm not the only one that had a Lego piece that didn't fit, right? Once you cut that sucker, what breaks? Everything. Yes, everything just broke. And now you spend the next however long going, compile, won't compile, I want to hook it right, and you're, we want this.
Then you have a commit with 137 files changed.
What's that?
Then you have a commit with 137
Yes,
files.
that's exactly right. And then, yeah, your PRs are just a nightmare. Really recommend New is Blue. This is actually a really good article. You guys ever watch the Lego movie? I know I have 4 kids, so not everything I bring out, translates. But if you haven't seen the Lego movie, go watch it. It's just such a great movie for everybody. Okay, it's heartwarming. It gets your feels. But the New is Blue. So Stephen Smith, who's actually in Detroit this week, wrote this article, and it's really good. He's basically, look, every time you're using the new keyword, you're probably doing something wrong. Okay, in general, right? If the exception for that is obviously typically if you're looping through a data structure and you're newing up like POCO objects and hydrating them from a data structure, that sort of thing. But other than that, if you're in your application, all right. So kind of I got line of business application here. I've got some UI logic, domain validation, a service proxy, some data logic, and what I really want to test is this domain validation. And I want to unit test this. So, boy, all I care about is this thing. I don't really care about the stuff below it. So what I really want to do is I'm going to give it some fake input, right, in the form of a unit test. And all I need is the things it plugs into, and I just want to be able to fake those things out, right? I just want to, look, I'm not testing the service proxy. I just want to test the scenario when the service proxy returns this thing. I'm not testing the service proxy. I just want to test that my domain validation does the right thing when it throws an exception. Right? When this thing throws an exception, am I logging it properly like I should be? Okay. So the concept here is that traditional dependencies, my application actually goes and gets all the things that it needs directly. In this new world, or rather the thing that I'm using goes and gets them. In the new world, my application is composing those things and then using them where I need to use them. All right? Tends to be more flexible, more configurable, and significantly more testable. All right. How much time do we have? To keep it
7:01.
7 hours? Awesome. What's that?
You said it's 7:01.
It's 7:01. How long do we go till? About 8?
Yeah.
Nice. Oh, you guys are in. We're good. Yeah. So we're going to talk about manual dependency injection. If I'm using a framework, the nice thing is it goes from all of this stuff where I'm having to go new it up and control it, and really I'm registering that in a container registration at some point, and then I'm just asking for it. Hey, give me this thing that I need, and I don't really care what its dependencies are at this point. I've declared that and configured that in another location. Awesome. That is perfect. What are the DI frameworks that you guys are working with today? Unity, Ninject. Ninject is where oh man, Ninject is like my DI crush. Okay, love Ninject. I don't use it anymore, performance issues, but I love Ninject. What's that? What else? AutoFac. It's good. What else? Castle, Windsor. Yeah, been around forever. No structure map people? Yeah, structure map is like mine. I love structure map. It's been around the longest, by the way. The longest continually used DI framework. So here's an example. Like some DI frameworks are going to use like XML configuration, where you're going to map things to another, and most are going to end up doing. I prefer a Fluent interface where my configuration is actually in code rather than in XML. What are the trade-offs and benefits of doing XML configuration versus or the other? That is correct. That is correct. Do you ever do that? Yeah. Oh my gosh. So there might be other issues to work through. What's that? So let me throw out some scenarios, because the benefit of XML configuration tends to be I can make a change, let's say in production, by just replacing that XML file. Okay, all right, so that's the part where I went, oh dear Lord. Okay.
I did like his I did like his example of comparing one against another.
So the thing I like about a Fluent interface is this. I find I'm never making changes in production. I'm pushing changes to production through a build process. Okay. I'm never pushing to production without recompiling. So that ability to change out that XML file doesn't really affect me in that scenario. The other thing that I like about a Fluent interface is I get compile time checking, not runtime checking. Right? So I compile this, and I'm as opposed to debugging XML that doesn't actually get ran until I run it. Okay. The other thing now with the Control F12 taking me to the implementation, it's not as big of a thing. But before that was in Visual Studio, I really liked having this one place I could go to that was my Rosetta Stone, where I could say I'm using this interface. Oh, go to the and I could click right on the implementation, F12 into it, and that was my easy way to navigate. And that was something that a Fluent interface code gave me that XML not so much. Okay. Mileage may vary. It's something you have to be able to take on and think about in your own environment. Who said XML though is what they use? I'm not going to throw. Here you go. I feel like there's a pain point there you're going to run into, and that's a stress ball to help with that. So I'm just throwing that out there.
I have run into that pain point in the past.
You're saying you want a stress ball.
Saying he wants a stress ball.
But I run into that pain point. The pain point is getting the configuration of the XML file. Well,
Yes.
it's easier to write it.
Yes.
So, but I've done both.
Yeah, part of the reason is because I don't have control over the actual code. We get it from an entirely different team altogether. And so it's easier for me to make new secret missions and secret agents in an XML config file than to try to go to them and wait 3 weeks for them to put something together.
So you're configuring code that someone else wrote. Okay.
So let me jump in on that just for a second. And we talk a lot these days about infrastructure as code. That XML file kind of configuration should be treated to version control, which means you really don't want it loose sitting out there without it being attached to a specific version of the code. And so at that point, you may as well have it be in the same language as the code. Because you really don't want to version it separately. You don't want to go out and tweak that without saying, okay, we're checking this in as version XYZ.
It should be a DLL.
Should be something, yeah, it should be something like that. At that point, if I need to test 2 or 3 different versions, I'm actually going to be able to deploy those from version control and say, version 1.2.1 on this machine,
Yes.
1.2.3 on that machine, let's test the differences.
And I would suggest, if the reason for XML configuration, because the way you explained it made sense, it was someone else is writing the code, but I have the DL, I don't have the source code, but I want to use a different implementation when I'm deploying it than what they shipped me, right? I think there's bigger challenges there to work on. That's all I'm going to say.
It is a struggle.
All right. It sounds like it sounds like the process and the flow of going from development to production in your may not be ideal. So, all right. Yes.
I understand that dependency injection is good. If we are writing a library that you want to ship, right?
Yeah.
In that case, how do you?
Oh, I'm going to hit on that at the end. Thank you. If you guys didn't hear, he's like, DI is good, but if I'm writing a library that I'm going to ship for other people to use, how do I take advantage of DI, but I still want to? Yeah, that's a great question. We'll hit on that at the end. It's called Poor Man's DI, and we'll run through that a little bit. Okay? All right, perfect. Hang on to that though. Remember that. All right. Lots of things that when you're doing dependency injection configuration, you're doing kind of implementation mapping here. You're also possibly setting up property injection. I'm not going to go into specifics right now, but constructor injection. You may work with open generics, which are really nice, the containers that will support open generics. You also have lifecycle models, so things like if it should be singleton or transient, which means every time I ask for one, I get a new one, right? Or do I want this to exist in a pool, right? Do I want like a pool of 10 or 50 and tell my container, hey, spin up a bunch of these and just have them on hand for when I need them, right? Or is this going to be per thread or an ASP.NET per request? That it behaves like singleton, but not across my entire application, just per request, right? So you get into some really nice options with your lifecycle management when you're doing DI. Not going to spend too much time on interceptors and listeners, but I am going to talk about them. let me talk about interceptors and listeners, and then we'll come back and look at some code. Is that okay? Yeah. All right. Who knows this scene from this particular James Bond? This happens to be the best scene in any James Bond movie ever, if you didn't know that. You get a squishy toy or a spinner if you know which movie this came from. If you know what movie this came from, you get a squishy toy. Or Tomorrow Never Dies. Who said it? All right. He was first. No, you were first. I couldn't tell.
Give it to him.
All right. Come on, it's a red spinner. Awesome.
Very squishy.
Yes. All right, so if you don't know the scene, the setup is great for this. This is a scene where James Bond, so it starts in this room, all these big cameras, and all these guys are talking and making decisions, and they're like, oh, we need to, and all you know is there's someone there, with a camera zooming in on the stuff, and they see all these, it's like a swap meet for terrorists. They're buying this, and they see this thing, so the military's like, send in the strike force, pull your man out. And the next thing you see is they realize after the missiles have been shot from the ship and the missiles are coming in to blow up everything, they realize there's a plane there with nuclear bombs on it. This is not going to go well, okay? And at this point, the camera is just sitting there and you see this person running off like towards the thing, and the generals are all freaking out, and they turn to M and they go, what's he doing? Do you know her line? His job. That's so great. Sorry, it's like my best favorite scene ever. I'll just nerd out on that for a minute. But it's, he just goes and, does what James Bond is supposed to do. Here's the point though. These guys are not James Bond. They're not the guys doing the work. They're kind of on the side going, okay, the mission has begun. Hey, Dr. Evil's been stopped. It took 22 seconds. Hooray. Right? So there's things when you're writing code that aren't the code, but they're kind of related. So this is where interceptors and listeners become things like aspect-oriented programming can come into play. So you might want to do things like, I have this request to stop Dr. Evil. Well, hold on. Let me check your authentication. If you're used to MVC where you attribute that this person must be authenticated, that is aspect-oriented programming, right? You can write your own attributes over your code, and it doesn't have to be in ASP.NET, right? You could do things like, hey, I want to log when this call comes in. I want to log when it came in. I want to log when it was done, and how long it took. You can do things like, if you're building a WPF app, you could say, hey, there's multi-threading happening here, and I need to invoke the UI thread. And I don't want to write that cruft code every time I do that. I'm just going to attribute it, and then let that take care of that for me. It's really handy. I will say this. If you start writing your own aspect-oriented attributes, that sort of thing, and you wiring them up through DI, you almost always end up working with dynamic proxy, which comes out of the Castle project. Okay? Everybody just reuses dynamic proxy. So if you use MockQ, under the hood, they're using dynamic proxy. RhinoMox, dynamic proxy. Ninject, when you want to do AOP stuff with Ninject, interceptors and listeners, dynamic proxy. That's just the way it works. One of the things about dynamic proxy, as you're building your classes, you end up making your methods and your properties, virtual, right? Or VB overridable, right? Essentially, because what dynamic proxy does is it says, okay, here's this method, but I'm going to, create my own runtime version of it. It can get hairy. It's powerful and it's worth mentioning. But let's talk about some code instead. All right? Yes. That screen I don't think is going to show up well. Like not at all. Ooh, that was loud. So let's maybe change the zoom here a little bit. You guys tell me if that's better. Is that enough or more? More? Okay. And I can.
Maybe changing the background from black to.
You guys don't like the black color? All right. I never go to presenter mode. That's weird. I know. I know it's built in though now, right? What's that?
Control Q, present on.
Control Q.
Present on, one word. Start it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. You're talking about the quick launch.
Yeah.
Present on. I don't think so, Dave.
Isn't it like F control F12?
Yeah. So I like the black background, but you know, I really want to do it in a way that you guys can see it. Can you see this okay? No, I'm seeing lots of no's. Okay. All right, well, let's do this. I think, where's my theme editor? I'll just pick a different theme for now. I don't want to do it that way.
That's the top one.
What's that?
Sorry, tools,
options.
Thank you. No, that's where I just was.
You go to general.
General.
Thank you.
Theme.
Oh, that'll work.
Blue.
You just got blue or light?
Light.
Light works too.
All right, I'm gonna spend the next 10 minutes trying to read my own code, if that's okay. Ah, it's so bright. Does that work? Is that better?
Yeah. I like it better black.
How about on this side? We'll do it, and then on this side,
Yeah.
how's that gonna work? New feature request, put that on what is it, voice?
We'll give them special glasses.
Yeah, user voice. I think Visual Studio should support 2 themes simultaneously.
On different screens.
Yeah, come on, make that happen. So let me introduce you. So this is the code we're going to walk through, but I actually have some other code I want to walk through first. Is that okay?
Yes.
All right. The other code is over here on a different branch called V2, because it's stuff that I like how the flow works over here on V2. So I'm on V2. All right. And so I have a collection of interfaces here. Really, it's just for consistency between 2 different libraries. Okay. So you can see I've got, here's the basic idea of this application. The basic idea of this application is I want to send a message. Now maybe the message is going to go through UPS, maybe the message is going to go through FedEx, I don't know. But I also, along the way, I want to do things like I probably want to find out how much it's going to cost to send the message, right? So it's going to be entirely based on weight. Weight, in our case, is the number of characters. Like a longer message is going to weigh more, that just makes sense, and cost more to send than a shorter message. Why do you think, Twitter limits you to 140 characters? Cost savings, obviously. The other thing that this app's going to do is we want to maybe probably encrypt it when we send it. We're not logging at this point, but that's, again, this version of this application. But again, so all we really want to do is we want to send it. So let's go into a console app, and let's take a look at what this console app might look like. So in this case, I'm not doing any DI. Okay? So I'm literally here saying I want to new up the sender app called Not So Great App, because it's not so great. And then I get a result, and then I write it. And if I were to run this guy, it runs pretty well. Oh, increase my font in console. I didn't do that yet either.
Right click.
What's that?
Right click on the top.
Yeah.
Go to
Properties. That'll work. There we go. Thank you. 24, is that good for you guys?
Should be.
28. Let's go crazy. Better? So we'll say hello Southfield. So it costs 10. I don't know 10 what. It costs 10 of them. And the encrypted message, you can see we've got really strong encryption. XXX, hello Southfield, and then XXX. So clearly that's going to make it hard to read and it encrypts it. And then we're done. All right. So how is that doing it? I really can't tell from here. Okay? If I drill into this guy, I'm going to see, okay, well I've got this not so great app, and he takes in a message, oh, I have a cost calculator, and I have a sender that's in use. But I'm pointing out those things weren't obvious before. I'm hiding my dependencies. Now here, it's not so bad, because again, this is a very simplified thing. What's the largest class file you've ever opened?
5,000 lines.
Yeah, those are scary, right? Obviously, small classes are easier to consume, read, but especially when you start talking about these long class files and you've got some newed up thing down in here you didn't realize you were using, and now it's going to bite you in the butt later on. Okay? So we want to really move those things up front, make them obvious. These are the things that we're using inside of here. And we're not at this case. And if I were to go into the calculator and how he calculates prices, I also, okay, you guys ever have logic like this you're dealing with?
Oh, yeah.
So if the message is greater than 10, well then we're going to add 10 to the price. But if the message length, if the weight of it, obviously, if it's greater than 5, well then we're going to add 5. But if it's just greater than 0, then we'll add 4. Oh, okay. Oh, wait. But if there's a 3 exclamation points, that means it's really urgent. We're going to times it by 3. There's a cost involved there. But if there's only 1 exclamation point, we're just going to double the price. If you're sending God Save the Queen, James Bond, it's going to be free. So there you go, right? Because that seems like that would be an important service to Queen and Country or something.
But the Queen will be dead.
Oh.
UPS is going to lose it.
UPS might lose it at that point, yes. And so then we've got something like if you put deal in here, right, half off. So again, not that hard to read through in this scenario, but this is the kind of place where those business rules and how you're applying them can easily get a little bit out of hand. Lots of if-else statements and, right? You with me?
Recursion.
Yeah. So we'll jump into some other scenarios. So let's take a look at maybe another way to tackle this application, and it'd be a slightly different way of implementing these same interfaces. So what's that?
Before you go, there's a bug inside your code.
I probably have lots of bugs inside this code. I was typing this while I was driving here. I wasn't the one driving.
So if you have God Save the Queen,
Yes.
and also deal,
Yes.
It's the 0.
Divide by 0.
That's true. If you put God Save the Queen and deal, you're going to get a, no, it'll be fine. You're going to have 0 divided by 2.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't write a bug. My code is perfect.
Dependency injection.
My code is perfect. Yeah, also, how are you going to unit test this thing? What's the setup for that unit test going to look like?
Test case, test case, test case, test case, test case.
And then when you go to change, what's the cost of changing one of these rules?
Test case fail, test case fail.
Just want to absorb some of that, because I know, because I do as well, I know you have code like this at work today that you try to avoid. Okay? We're on the same team here, guys. I feel you, right? Yes.
You have to change all but test cases for every change.
Yes, you would have to have test, and this becomes very brittle and hard to change very quickly, right? Okay.
You can put those rules in XML.
You could put these rules in XML and then exponentially increase the complexity, and then make your life hell by storing them in SharePoint. Oh, okay, we'll move on. Unless it was Office 365, then everything's great, because everything is fixed in the next version. That's what they keep telling me. Sorry, we'll move on. I actually do like Office 365, but I did get this great book on Stockholm Syndrome. And at first, I hated it, but now, man, I can't put that book down. I think some people writing code have code Stockholm Syndrome from time to time. So, all right, let's get in here. So those were the slightly better app, right? So now I've got this super application again, but what am I doing differently here? Now I'm saying, look, if you're going to use me, you need a cost calculator and you need a sender. Those are the two things that you need. Okay, at this point. Now, if we're going to talk about compositional roots here in a second, where you'll surface all of that up higher to actually see that deeper stuff in a single place. But at this point, at least I know, if I want to unit test this, because it's easy to say, well, wait a minute, isn't sender, I didn't show you guys sender, isn't sender inside, he's newing up an encryptor, right? That's happening inside. And so that's, in the encryptor, the powerful adding XXX on either side, right? That makes it super hard to read. I was actually looking for a pig Latin encryptor. I thought that would have been awesome, but you know, we'll save that for another time. So, but why don't I have encryptor surfaced here, even though I'm using it under the sender?
Because sender has a concrete type.
Yes, and I don't really care at this point if sender is working properly or not. I care at this point if my super application is working properly or not, right? If this class is working, and I care, am I capturing price? Is cost when I return something? Am I returning that price here? And does this method get called? And that's really what I care about in this guy. Okay. All right. Let's jump back over because the second part of this is the part that
What are you trying to say with that?
With what?
With you don't care yet. Are you talking
Okay.
about an iterative approach to introducing dependencies actually into your code?
I'm saying by separating, so I'm not saying that integration testing isn't important. Obviously it is, right? You guys have probably seen the memes, like a drawer here and a drawer here, and they can't open because they literally bump into each other. You know, 2 unit tests pass, right? But no integration tests, right? Or if you've ever seen the picture, there's also a picture in a men's bathroom stall where 2 stalls. Like, that's not going to happen, guys. You know, they may both work independently, just not together at the same time, right? So that's always something you're still not doing. But in this scenario, what I'm getting at is, I want to focus on the thing I'm testing. I talked about logger earlier. That comes up a lot in the work that I do, where if there's an exception, I want to validate that exception is getting handed to the logger. Okay, so I have a unit test for that because it should happen, right? I want to make sure that doesn't get for whatever reason, big code block. I want to make sure that doesn't get dropped, and I'm validating. I'm saying on the front end, look, if there's an exception, the logger should get called with this exception. I'm not testing if the logger works or not. I just care that I called the logger. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So eventually, do I need to test my logger? Yes, of course. And when I test my logger, I don't really care about the thing that's supposed to call the logger. Then I'm only testing the logger. Okay? All right. If I tried to, that becomes unmanageable and brittle, right? If everything was, you know, the unit tests, what keeps them healthy is when they are really isolated and they are in fact unit tests.
It's like geometry proofs. You do one step at a time.
Yes. Yeah, that's a really good actually example.
So question.
Yes, go ahead.
So if something new comes in and looking at this
Uh-huh.
project, will that be for them? It will be easier to understand this way. It's all distributed everywhere. These files.
So, yeah, how readable does the code
yeah,
become?
that's what I'm trying to.
So, you know, there are, 2 things that are really hard in software development, right? Naming things, cache invalidation, and off by 1 errors, right? Okay. So the naming things part, that's a challenge, and this is where I said earlier, I feel like code should do one of 2 things. It should either do the stuff or organize the stuff. It becomes hard to read when it's doing both. That's when it becomes, I'm tracking along in this flow, and now all of a sudden I'm in the weeds, and I'm like, oh, I gotta pull out of the weeds, and now I'm tracking along this flow. So that's where like method naming should be very declarative on, this is the thing that we're doing in here. This is the thing that we're doing here, this is the thing that we're doing here. Okay. I wrote one of the first Windows Phone applications for I Can Has Cheeseburger. Okay. If you guys don't know the website, I Can Has Cheeseburger, I'll just say that in the very first that was on the store, it did throw LOL exceptions internally. It was just great. I loved catching LOL exceptions, and there were methods that said like I Can Has, you know, the next image. Right? Why? Why do I say that? Because it should be declarative in your methods so that you understand what's happening here and what is it doing. Code gets read at least 8 times for every time it gets written.
Yeah, I'm trying to get the flow. I mean, for them to
Yeah.
understand the flow. I mean,
So I feel like separating things out
Yeah.
makes that flow more declarative and easier to read. there are times where maybe I need to dip in and say, okay, well, I'm having an issue here, so how is this thing doing the thing that it's doing? But if I've got good coverage there and I just know it's doing it well, then when I'm reading the flow, I don't care how it's doing the thing that it's doing. I just care, is it, oh, it's supposed to do that thing now. And now it's supposed to do that thing, and now it's supposed to do that thing. Okay? All right. Where are we at? We're good. So here's a console app. And in this case, this console app is going to say, write line, some spy messenger sender. He's going to ask me to give him something. And I've got this logger. This logger is kind of interesting because I have internally this stack of messages. So every time I log to the logger, he's just capturing those messages. Okay? And then I've got a get message stack so I can get them all back out and read them. Okay? So I just point that out because in this case, I'm using this logger in different cases. And so what am I doing here? This is a compositional root. This is a place where I'm saying, look, I have all these pieces and I'm putting them together, and I'm putting them together in one place so then we can go down and do the things we want to do. Okay? Often I work with classes where our compositional root will be its own, like a static infrastructure method, where I'm just saying, hey, wire up my application. Okay, let me go do the thing. Or it doesn't have to be static per se. But I'm dealing with a lot of middleware right now that's running as a Windows service. So, questions on this before I move forward? So this is the case where like the data layer is using the logger and the encryption. And so this is a scenario where that got surfaced higher up because I had a compositional root. Okay? Yeah? All right. Let me get down in here.
15 minutes.
Thank you. All right. So I'm not going to run this. I actually want to look at what this would look like with DI in place. All right. So another scenario would be something like this. I'm going to say, hey, get the container, give me the application message sender that I want to use, and then I call it. Right? So right here I call the send method on it. And in this particular scenario, I've pushed all of that, how things are getting wired up. I'm no longer doing it in a compositional root within my application. I'm now using a container to do that. Now in this particular case, let me remember which container I'm using. Oh, getting some broken things. So this is Ninject. Yeah. So this is that reference break. Hold on. I'm going to have to do like a restore packages after I've changed on Git. That's lame. Sorry about that. We might jump over and just roll this by hand on the other branch. All right. So in this particular case, I really want to do this. Yeah. So remember when I was doing all that logic on the if statements? Wouldn't it have been nice if I could say, hey, give me all the rules and apply those rules? So let's jump over and see what that would look like, because this branch is not happy with me right now. And of course, I can. It's saying I changed things, so let's just undo those changes. All right. Yeah. So let's take a look at what that might look like. So in this case, I have, let me find, that's not so super. This one's a little bit better. I've got my library. And so remember that cost calculator? So it's not wired up yet, but this is a scenario where I could say, hey, I have a dependency on these rules. Just give me this list of rules. And the way I've built these rules out is to be able to say, I'm going to loop through them, and I'm going to ask, does this rule apply to this message? And if it does, I'm going to apply it. This is kind of a poor man's like rules engine. Okay? There are much more robust rules engines. I'm not saying this should be your solution, but I'm saying being able to leverage things like this can be beneficial. If anybody uses Structure Map has this great, a lot of scanning features. So you can tell Structure Map. I showed configuration earlier, right, where I was saying this interface goes to this interface, this interface goes to this interface. one of the things I like about structure map is you can say, hey, scan these assemblies and use convention. So convention would say, if it's called iLogger, and then there's an implementation called logger, map those together. If there's something called iTimekeeper, and I've got a class called Timekeeper that implements that interface, great, map those together. And so structure map allows me significantly to reduce even my registration code, which some people don't like, right? There are times that you're like, I actually want to see that registration and have that Rosetta Stone. Okay. The other thing that you can do with structure map is you can say register all instances of, so in this case we would say register all instances of like the I rules. Then in my constructor I can do this thing where I'm just asking for the list of them. So let's see an example of my rules. So here's my God Save the Queen rule. All right, has a rule name, so I can spit that out in my logging. And when it says, hey, does this apply to this? Well, I don't know. Does it have God Save the Queen in there? If it does, yes, it applies. What am I going to do? I'm going to return a 0. This initially, I get it, feels like more code than the if statements, right? What is the benefit here?
You can apply a particular rule without having to worry about applying the others.
Yes. Yes.
And you can add new rules at random.
That's right. And my new rule is in isolation, so it's not necessarily going to affect a different rule, right? Yeah.
But now you kind of separated out the order of things.
That's true. That you're absolutely right. If I get to a scenario where order matters, right? And in this case, because I had some places where I was setting hard values and some places I was doing percentages, right? In that, there's two ways I can handle that. I could actually refer to those as two different types of rules. So first I would run like the hard value rules, and then I would run like the percentage discount rules, right? So I could do that approach. The next level is where you would actually separate out the rule declarations from actually creating more of like a flow on how they're going to be applied. But that's way past where we're going right now. Yeah, but you're right, and that is actually the one big gotcha on this is if order matters, you don't have an order now. Yeah.
Can we look at the deal rule?
What's that? You want to make a new rule?
No, the deal one. The deal.
Oh yeah. Where's that at?
Special deal.
Special deal. Thank you. Yeah. So in this case, it's if it has deal in it, it's going to return half off.
What's the current cost? Oh.
Yeah. So in the method where I say apply, I pass in the string and the current cost.
Not sure if that actually works with your.
So let's look at how that gets used in the cost calculator, right? So I'm going to say, does this apply to this? And there I need the message. If it does, I set my current price to be whatever apply returns.
But what about the other, the one before, the God Save the Queen one?
Yeah, where it makes it 0. So again, yeah. And I will say this. Previously, we forced the order in the if statement. So there are some things you have to do, like a medium-sized rule. Well, I need to make sure I'm specifically excluding this from those other ones, right? So there are some things I have to keep into account. That when I'm saying what is the definition of medium, it's specifically, in this case 5 or more, and and 9 or less, right? So yeah. All right. For the sake of time, let's jump here. And also, my code was not happy with me just now, and I apologize for that. All right. We talked about interceptors and listeners. We looked at some scenarios, not all the scenarios I wanted to. Let's talk about a couple DI frameworks and wrap up. So Castle Project is the longest running complete stack. Structure Map's been around longer, but Castle was the first group to do like an MVC framework, right? So they had monorail for a long time. They had dynamic proxy, active record, which is really not an active project anymore, but it was still really cool at the time, right? There's a lot of stuff in Castle, in the Castle project. Okay? Spring.net. Here's the only time I've ever seen anyone ever use Spring.net. If you're at a shop that's a heavy Java shop and they're using Spring, and for some reason you think that using the same thing would be good. My experience has been I really like Unity and Structure Map and AutoFac and pretty, but it's there, and I think it's neat that it's supported by Interface 21 and they do the Spring framework stuff. But if I'm going from Java to .NET, I don't feel like I have to use the exact same, paradigms. Ninject, so awesome. The configuration I showed earlier was actually the Ninject Fluent configuration. Ninject was also the first DI to basically draw up XML config. They were like, yeah, we're not going to do that. So has some nice features. Doesn't have XML config. So anybody using Unity?
Actually, back to the other one.
Yeah, Ninject.
Lightweight, super fast, but you avoided it.
Yeah, so that's actually right. That's a good catch. It's not super fast anymore. It was when it came out. So thank you. Yeah, good catch. Totally not super fast anymore. It's kind of failed on some perf tests, and I haven't looked at it in about a year and a half. But the last time I looked at it, it didn't perf like this. I still love it. It's fun. Unity. Anybody using Unity? Awesome. What's great about Unity is it's from Microsoft. Next slide. So the other application blocks don't really get used anymore. It's completely open source now. It's on GitHub. I haven't seen how active it is.
Not very active.
Not at all. Like they haven't even changed the default icon on the GitHub webpage. It's kind of like, oh, come on, it's a really good container. It just feels a little abandoned right now. A little bit.
So there's just two guys that are building libraries around it.
Yes, and so I'm a big fan of Structure Map, and it's been around. It's the oldest DI container for .NET. It is really feature rich. A lot of the things I was talking about, the scanning, the exceptions, the policies, are built into it. It has some really nice diagnostics. Like there's a method that basically it's called what do I have, and so you can put that in a unit test where it basically says this is how I'm configured. So it's just a super easy way to say what's happening under the hood here. What are you mapping to what? And you can poke it, and it has some really nice integrations. I just keep finding it to be really fun. All right, I want to talk about Common Service Locator, and then we'll wrap up. We're what, 5 minutes? 4 minutes? Okay, awesome. Common Service Locator is a great idea that you should never use.
Unless you're doing a mobile app.
So let me talk about the idea. The one thing that Common Service Locator has is it's essentially not an implementation of a container. It's an interface that other containers can create adapters for. So for example, there is an AutoFac adapter for Common Service Locator. There is an adapter for Unity. There is an adapter for, why would that be helpful? If you were in a scenario where at the root of your application, right at the root when I was saying, hey, give me the container and, okay, resolve the thing. If in that one place in your application you decide to change containers, because that's one place in your application, and so instead of being AutoFac, you're going to Structure Map or Unity. If you're using the adapter in that particular place, the one place where you call the container, you would instead be calling against the Common Service Locator interface, and you wouldn't have to change any code there. Okay? There is a value to that, sort of. The pattern that is proposed by Common Service Locator pattern is this. Instead of you saying in your constructor what you want, you just say, give me the Common Service Locator pattern. Or in other words, give me as a constructor the container. Right? Okay. So if I say I need a logger, what do I need to mock? A logger. If I need the container, what do I need to mock now? Everything. Right? Everything, because I don't know at that point, I've lost sight of what is the class actually using. Right? So Common Service Locator pattern is a trap. And it's a trap because you've just lost the bit. What's the downside of declaring everything that you're using in your constructor? Sometimes your constructors get big. You have a lot of things in your constructor. And what should that tell you? Your class is probably doing too much. Right? So it's not a bad thing to keep that up front and center, because if it's hard to test, it's probably hard to use. And all right, does that make sense? When would I use a property injection versus constructor injection? Constructor injection means this is required. It means I can't do what I need to do without this thing. Property injection is typically more along the lines of, this would be nice, but now in my code I'm going to have to check to see if it's null or not. It also means, though, if I'm using property injection, I could change that implementation at runtime. Like the class is already newed up, and I can change out the property. So things to think about. Let's end with poor man's DI, because I said I would. This should look familiar to you guys. You have a class, you have a constructor. This is constructor injection for the agent, the gadget, and the mission. Sound good? Feel good? Look good? All right. What happens if I take this, and now I create a default constructor that's public, and in my default constructor, I'm constructor chaining specific implementations, right? This allows me to ship this library, for example, that has a file new experience that's great, right? As a consumer of this library, if I'm not using DI and I don't want to know how this library, what it's using under the hood, and what do you mean I need to give you an agent and a spy? I just want to say, give me the library new, and then I want to use it. This gives me a default behavior out of the box. But I'm still testable because I can still override any of those implementations through during my testing, for example, or through DI. Yeah?
I've used that kind of pattern before when refactoring things to
Yes.
DI.
Yes.
So you don't have to change everything else.
Yes, so that the things that are already hard newing it up don't break. Yep, and it is a way to get there. Yep. So essentially using default constructor with constructor chaining, and that is poor man's DI. All right? It's really good for future-proofing your DI, especially testability. It does require you have a greedy DI. And what that means is if it has two constructors, it's going to go for the one that it can fulfill the most of. Unity sometimes has issues. If you have a public constructor with nothing and a public constructor with three things, it tends to default to the public constructor that's empty. And I'm like, why would you do that? Everything I'm asking for is registered. So it's just it's helpful if you have a greedy DI, right? Greedy just means it's going to go for the big one that it can resolve. Yeah.
You then decorate the
Yes.
desired constructor with
You end up decorating the desired constructor, or in the configuration, I believe with Unity, you can tell it, hey, when you new this up, use this constructor. So, mission accomplished. Woo! Good job, guys. Thank you guys so much. Thanks for being here. What's that? Hope you learned some stuff. I hope. Are we giving away things?
Yeah, over there.
Oh, there's things over there to give away.
Yep.
James Bond, I didn't write. There was no music, so I feel like I don't have to do all the sound and stuff. I didn't get permission to use any of that stuff. So, thanks for not.
Copyright strikes on our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
this is on my YouTube channel.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Oh, we'll get through that. That's such a great video, by the way. I'm not going to play it right now. But.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, awesome. Thanks, man. You guys need to use the projector?
Yes. Just
Cool. Let me get out of your way. Oh, and where do we... There's the sound. Right?
We'll get a picture next one.
The real question is, where was that coming out of?
I have speakers.
Oh, was that out of you?
It was going out of HDMI.
Yeah, we
You have to do the HDMI pass-through.
Yeah,
I
I
wonder
did.
if it's the thing on the back.
It's the thing. Yeah, we didn't
have to run a cord.
Yeah, exactly. I thought about it.
We're gonna have to get a mixer. Yeah.
And whoever's going to go to pizza later, I guess we're going to, I don't know.
Shields.
Shields.
We have a whole after thing.
Okay. All right.
Just chill.
Just take a breath.
Need any water? You still got 2 waters up there.
Okay, thanks again, Caleb. So now it's time to thank our sponsors. So our platinum sponsors, Cash, Epitech, DevExpress, Galaxy Solutions, Brightwing, OST, and for gold sponsors, RMC, Robert Half, and X-by2. And for our meeting space, thank you, Microsoft. And also for our platinum sponsors for software and logistics. And for software, it's JetBrains and CodeSmith for gold sponsors. And volunteers don't just do the work, they make it work. So our volunteers for this year are Andrew Ballas, our speaker coordinator. Jeff Thompson is our welcome champion. Ken Patton is our board advisor, and Gary Beaver, our swag. So our officers, me for president, Brian Albertson, vice president, Dustin Kunjan is secretary, and Nick Doyle is treasurer. So did everyone like the food today? So Michigan Dev, if you haven't joined yet, everyone is welcome to join our Slack channel and chat with fellow Michigan developers.
I think that website's dead right now.
What?
Blame Andre. MichiganDevs.com I think is down. Go talk to Andre. We gotta ask Andre what's up with it.
So for the latest updates on Gang, please visit our meetup site, and you could by going to the link below there, or you just Google mygang.meetup. So special November meeting, it's gonna be November 18.
Yeah.
You want to?
Saturday. Yeah.
That's a Saturday.
So we're doing something a little bit different. Well, a lot different.
Other side. Go on. Go
Hold on. I know where the camera ends. I'm good here. So we're doing something a little bit different because this is our last year here with Microsoft. We had a board meeting and we've kind of nailed out some details. So for starters, November, we are not going to be having a meeting on the third Wednesday like we always have. We are going to be having essentially a one-day, one-track conference, which is completely free. We'll be having it right here. The game plan, we've got our speakers lined up. We'll be starting at 9.
Registration begins at 8.
Registration begins at 8. We're starting at 9. We've got David Giard doing a keynote. We have a lot of great speakers. We're even paying to fly in a few speakers. So we have essentially a one-day conference. The important bit is this room is not infinite. We can't have 200 people in here. So while it is a completely free event, gang members who are paid members with dues, you may have noticed the lightning talk that was kind of oddly timed where it showed you how you could check and see if you were a member. The idea is we've always had a Christmas party in December, which members could come to. We usually have 30-ish that come to the party. That replaces our December meeting. So it's kind of an added perk. If you're a member of Gang, you will be able to come to the Christmas party in December, and also you will have a guaranteed seat in the room for the conference. So if you're not a member and you want to come, you might get bumped off if we have a ton of people. And there's usually a few hundred folk that like to come to conferences around here. So this is our strong-armed attempt of, if you like the content we put out, if you like the food, that food is not cheap. We do it every month. We have, not pizza. So membership helps a ton with that, on top of all of our great sponsors. So it's $40 for a year. You can go to migang.org, and there's a membership link at the top. You can click it if you're a member. You can use the exact tool he showed you in the lightning talk to check and see if your dues are up.
Link there to PayPal.
And then you can click and get redirected over to PayPal, become a member, help us out, come to the conference. It's going to be great. So.
October.
Oh yes, and also because we are doing a conference in November, we are moving our elections up from November to next meeting October. Only members can vote. So if you want to help pick who's running Gang in the new year, continuing the crazy series of announcements.
Yeah, we might. Yeah, because we're gonna have to move to another.
Right.
venue.
So the board kind of sat down, and for those of you who come monthly. You may recall in January we discussed the idea of moving downtown with Microsoft, and nobody wanted to. Short version, like 5 of us wanted to go downtown. So we have a couple of spaces lined up that will hopefully work out and be great. But the short version is for next year we will no longer be in Microsoft. We will be remaining in Southfield. The closest location we have is not even a mile up the exact same road. So we are definitely going to be in Southfield next year. Details of that will be forthcoming. When we know, you'll know. We'll put it out as soon as possible. Same day, same everything. So big announcements, etc. So Cliff Notes, not moving to Detroit next year. Conference, November 18th, third Saturday, just like we're the third Wednesday. Christmas party, December, which we'll put more info out as time wears on. And hope to see all of you in November.
Oh, yes. And if you guys are using the membership tracker and you're getting redirected back to the index after you put your email in, it's a bug. That just means you guys are not in our system, so you need to start a membership.
Yeah, you need to be
So the short version, I guess, is if you put your email in and it doesn't work, just give us money.
Yeah.
Fair warning, just so you're aware. Remind me, does it actually tell you when you expire?
It only tells you that is the next feature.
Okay.
This was MVP last night from 10 a.m. to 4 a.m.
Cool. So something to just keep in mind, because our MVP is still missing a few features that I'll bludgeon him to put in. If you're not sure if you are a member and you want to renew anyway, just do it. We prorate it. So like if you will have 2-year expiration date and then a year. So don't be afraid to throw us money if you just want to be a member, you want to be sure you're in. Because if your membership runs out the day before the conference, I will be a heartless bastard. So.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. So, first time attendees, anyone first time? Okay. So, can you let us know, like, introduce yourself to the group and tell us how you found out about the Welcome. So, can you sign up?
Probably need to just add you as a logo. Just that. It'll work tomorrow.
Welcome, Oscar. Anyone else? Okay. So let's go to looking for workers. So let's start with looking for work. Anyone looking for work? You could stand up and give a 30 to 60
Stand up
second
in an orderly fashion.
Yeah,
verbal
come in
resume.
front of the camera and let the world see you.
Second. Yeah, that's
Your elevator pitch. Do it.
Like anyone else?
That's it.
Yeah, I'm Greg. I'm pretty much a regular feature here now, looking for work. I graduated from Wayne State with a computer science degree a while ago. I'm trying to get my foot in the door and get a job. So.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, let's go to looking for workers. So, anyone looking for workers could have like 30 to 60 seconds to describe your job openings.
Hey everybody, Dan Davis. Introduced myself last month around here. Director of Technology and Delivery with a new growing organization in downtown Detroit called Autobooks. Looking for .NET help, front-end help, a lot of SQL. We're a technology fintech company, so there is a lot of data structure around payments and different things like that. So if that's your forte and you're looking for a new change, that's great. Unfortunately, not a lot of you raised your hand as because we're looking for work. I'll ask a favor of you. Who's your friend that you know that loves .NET, loves SQL, loves to be in the heart thick of good business efforts, but really hates their current job? Because I want to talk to those people. Yeah. So I brought plenty of cards. If you can think of somebody, grab a card for me and connect us. That would be awesome. So if you have any questions, if I missed anything, again, downtown Detroit, Madison Building, right across the street from American Park. So it's a really cool space. It's awesome to be down there with the birds of Detroit and all that good stuff. Unfortunately, it sounds like Gang won't be our neighbor come after the start of the year.
Maybe.
But it was a 20-minute drive up in the lodge to get here, so not hard to get back to Gang. All that good stuff. Yes, yes. Either get ahead of it or wait a little bit. Okay.
That bug's fixed.
I drove up here during rush hour though, still was less than 30 minutes. Yes. Yeah, it wasn't.
I've had it like up to 45 here. That's why you only think me about me to live here. It looks like 6:45.
Okay, anyone else?
Hey, I'm Greg. I didn't see our guy who was supposed to come here to do this, but I'm Greg. I work for Domino's. We're looking for a couple of mid-level to senior .NET developers to help us build the next generation of tools for Domino's. I do see one of my fellow Domino's people over there, Sean. So if you guys want to come work with us in Ann Arbor, let me know.
Anyone else? No? Okay. So after this meeting, some of us will go to Shield's Pizza for a social hour. And this social hour is not a gang-sponsored event. So let's go here. So now it's time to give away free stuff. Ryan.
Is there anybody else that didn't get tickets?
Yeah. Anyone else? Okay. Everyone have tickets?
Don't have a ticket, raise your hand.
So Ryan will tell us what we have there.
Patches. Yeah, let's skip that. Dev Days bag. A space patch? Where the heck did this come from?
The swag carrier.
DBA in space. Does anybody have a DBA they'd like to send to space?
There you go.
Oh, we have one.
I didn't know that was an option.
Okay then. Licenses, CodeRush for Visual Studio, Never on OpenVision, CodeSmith Generator, 2 of those, and then any JetBrains tool you like. If you grab one of those, make sure they get back to me. If you have in previous months filled one of these out and you don't have anything, blame me, because I totally haven't actually sent them off because I have no idea what I'm doing and Ken doesn't respond to emails anymore. So fill them out, get them back to me. We will ship them off to our sponsors as soon as we can. It's just like playing a game of telephone DBAs in space. We have 2 Raspberry Pis and we have 2 Fez hats. If you've been here before, you're going to know this spiel, but if you take one of these, please make sure that you're going to do something with it. Don't just let it collect dust. And an important note, the Fez hats don't work unless you have a Pi. So you only allowed one thing, don't try to be sneaky. If you've won a Pi previously, grab a Fez hat. Someone remind me, what do the Fez proto Pis do?
It's like a breakout board for the Raspberry Pi.
Okay.
So you like wire stuff up like breadboards.
Oh, okay, cool. So you can, yeah, sweet. So that's, oh, flip-flops. Cannot forget flip-flops. That's respect.
Okay, so I'm just going to read the last 3 digits of the numbers. So first number, 110, 122, 147, 126, 143.
Okay, let's do this.
151, 144.
I'm totally going to stream this just for like the one person that's really voting.
Eventually, we're going to have a virtual raffle.
116.
Play at home. Pick a number between 1 and 400.
134. 142. 131. 124. 128. 113. 118.
You went the exact wrong way to not be on camera.
132. 159. 115.
I'm really
152.
I
156.
kind of want to just let it run to continue creation for giggles.
Is the
So it's
membership
108,
expected to work on mobile?
111, 129.
Do we look like people that test
137,
mobile devices?
and 154.
All right.
That was finished at 4 o'clock last morning and was started at like 2 o'clock. So,
All right. Well,
and you should talk to the lead developer. He's also head of QA.
Hey, so I believe I've just signed up. But
Did you give PayPal $40?
I did.
Then you're a member. Congratulations.
So this is the next manual step that gets to go into that spreadsheet and update.
Oh fuck.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
And then
Hey,
just keep
everybody
in
do
mind,
me a
I have like
favor.
a 5-minute cache
Real
in
quick.
there, so if it's not,
Hey, everybody yell goodbye for me real quick so I can turn this off.
Goodbye.